Good morning, everybody, and happy Valentine's Day. We want to welcome you to our Lightspeed CRM overview webinar today. I'm excited to have you all here and hopefully learn a little bit more about what CRM can do for you and your dealership. And we'll go ahead and talk just about the housekeeping rules. I know a lot of you have been on our webinars before, but just a reminder, anytime throughout the webinar, feel free to ask the questions that come to mind. Just put them in the Q&A chat at the bottom of the box, and we'll address those at the end of the webinar. And some of them we might even add, questions might answer throughout the webinar. So we'll just make sure we follow up those. And a reminder that today's webinar, the recording and all the Q&A that gets asked today will be also sent out to all of you in a follow-up email sometime tomorrow. So without further ado, I want to turn it over to today's presenter, Brian Tierney.
Thank you, Diana, and welcome, folks. For those of you that have attended Wednesday webinars before, you know me. I'm Brian Tierney, the Customer Development Manager here at Lightspeed. Been with Lightspeed for 13 years in various capacities, from support to on-site trainer to working with the sales department as a business management and consultant. Prior to my time with Lightspeed, I worked in a dealership here in Salt Lake City, Utah, where I'm talking to you from, and spent most of my time on a parts counter. Spent a little bit of time behind a service counter and did some sales as well. Started back in 1995, which means I've been using Lightspeed for just about 30 years. So thanks for joining us today, and we'll dive right in. Today, we're going to talk about CRM and why Lightspeed CRM. Well, there's a number of reasons why we like to talk about Lightspeed CRM, one of which is recently I've been reached out to by a number of OEM companies that we work with, some of our partners, and some of the third-party companies, asking for assistance with training on sales-related functions as it relates to Lightspeed and CRM. And the reason they're reaching out to us is they're noticing that as we move away from the pandemic period, that unprecedented time in our industry, dealerships and salespeople are having to relearn how to sell. We're kind of in new territory here. And so our OEMs and third-party companies are looking at us for training and assistance with their dealers on learning how to sell again. And so some of the things we're going to talk about in today's presentation and today's webinars are the things we've been telling the OEMs and third-party companies, as well as our customers, with regard to CRM. We're going to talk about lead management. We're going to talk about ways we can automate communications, but we also want to emphasize that there's a human element to those communications. We want to show you how that works as well. We're going to talk about some tools that salespeople and management can use in their CRM, their customer relation management experience, such as the calendar and mobile application. We'll look at some reporting and analytics that management owners can keep track of what's going on in their sales departments. And then we'll take some questions at the end of the presentation. We're going to start by talking about lead management. And really what I want to emphasize with the CRM product is that Lightspeed CRM is really a customer experience management tool. And though it is a technology-based program, it is a technology tool, and it does have some automation, and automation is great, but there is a human element to it. We want to emphasize the human element because we want to emphasize the interaction that we create between ourselves and our customers to increase their satisfaction and increase sales. And we're going to talk about how we do all of those things through lead management and CRM. We're also going to talk about those automations that I mentioned. Those automations are pretty cool. Those are the technologies and why we use Lightspeed. Kind of makes some of the effort in selling a little more automatic. And we'll talk about how that works. But we also wanted to emphasize that human element. We want to really show you how there's still a human being behind those communications. And as we kind of move into an automation space with all of the technologies and robots that are talking to each of us every single day, sometimes we get tired of the robots talking to us. We want a person to talk to us, and we'll show you how we use Lightspeed CRM to do those things. So let's go ahead and jump right into Lightspeed. I'm going to pull the Lightspeed login screen up on your Zoom screen here. We're going to talk about lead management, and we'll go through a little bit of a sales experience when it comes to CRM. What does a salesperson's experience look like when it comes to CRM? And by the way, some of you may know this, some of you may not. There is a service department element to CRM, and we're going to talk about that as well following the sales piece. So let's go right into sales. I'm going to click sales at the top of the Lightspeed screen. And we're going to dive right into leads, quotes, and deals, where that lead management functionality lives. This is kind of the interface that the sales department or salespeople are going to see as they're interacting with their customers. And it's kind of the beginning of our story, if you will. So as I pull up the leads, quotes, and deals screen, we see a series of colors and columns on the screen that are describing what's going on in the sales department. Things like the date the lead was created, the worksheet number, the customer name, the stage name, which I'll come back to in just a moment, along with some unit details and perhaps some notes about that particular lead, and even last time we followed up and next follow-up appointments. But going back to that stage column, what you'll notice is there are some phrases or terms that are describing where we're at in that sales process. Yes, this is part of the sales deal portion. It's not necessarily part of CRM, but it does have a CRM connection, and you'll see what that connection is in just a moment. But we've also color-coded those phrases, such as close the deal, deliver, demo ride, so that at a glance when I'm looking at this screen, whether I'm a salesperson, a manager, or an owner, I have a good sense of what's going on inside of my sales department just by looking at those descriptions. We're going to grab one of the deals from the screen here. We're going to kind of walk around and talk about what CRM looks like in the deal screen. Now, I won't spend a lot of time describing the sales deal screen itself, but we're going to talk about the CRM elements that live here. And the first thing I'll point out, we're going to imagine that John Thomas, our customer in this particular deal, and where I'm seeing that name, for those of you that are new to Lightspeed, you'll see on the upper left side of the screen the buyer and co-buyer's name inside of this lead. Now, John was on his computer at home one night looking at my website, saw a vehicle on my website that he was interested in. And on my website, there's a form where John can put his name, his phone number, his email address, and say, tell me more about that vehicle. I'm interested. And that tell me more inquiry, that lead inquiry drops from my website or from an OEM's website or from Facebook, for example, into Lightspeed, and it brings you into a screen that looks something like this. Any of the information that John included, like address, phone numbers, email address, is all going to be communicated through that lead management function, and it's going to drop that lead into Lightspeed. And it's also going to tell us where the lead came from. Did it come from my website? Did it come from Facebook? Did it come from the OEM's website? We're going to want to know that, especially if we're spending money on lead sources, the places where those leads come from. If we're investing money into those lead sources, we're going to want to know what our return on that investment is. So we want to know what that source is. It's also going to assign a stage. So when that lead drops into Lightspeed, you'll notice there's my stage menu. These are all the stage selections that I've got within my particular environment. And just to let you know, you can customize those stage definitions. They can be phrases that define your process that are different than what you see on the screen. And generally, a list of stages has a beginning. My beginning is the word greet. Yours might be introduction. It might be lead. It might be the word start. Could be anything. But it's describing, again, where we're at in that lead process, which goes back to our leads, quotes, and deals rainbow-colored list here of describing where we're at in the process. It's also going to assign a salesperson to that lead, and that uses a tool called a round robin. Now, most often round robins are set up as an alphabetized list of salespeople. For example, the first person in the alphabetized list is Amber. She gets the first lead. Brad gets the second. Chris gets the third, and so on. But you can also set those round robins up in a couple of different ways. One, just an alphabetized list of salespeople. Two, they could be set up based on unit type. So maybe you have people that are skilled in selling boats, and you have people that are skilled in selling RVs, and people that are skilled in selling motorcycles. And you can set those round robins up based on vehicle type and then add the salespeople to those lists. Another option that I see a lot of our dealers using is a BDC or a management group. And those leads go into a dedicated group of people who know the sales staff and then reassign the lead based on who they feel like is the best fit for that particular sale. But in this case, Chris Hauk is our salesperson in this deal, and he was assigned when that lead dropped into Lightspeed. As we go through the process, the salesperson is in charge of updating those stages to further define where they're at in the process so that person knows, can remember where they're at, but also management is keeping eyes on what stages the salesperson is at in the process as well. The unit the customer was interested in is also attached to the lead, and that's a vehicle that lived on my website or on the OEM's website or some reference that the customer saw on a web platform and said, tell me more. That tell me more vehicle has been attached to the lead as well. Another function that happens, and this is the really cool automation element with the human touch that happens through CRM, happens on the communications tab. And on the communications tab within the lead is a follow-up chain. And a follow-up chain gets assigned to that lead as soon as it hits Lightspeed. And follow-up chains can be assigned to specific leads. So we might have a series of follow-ups that are based on our website, a series of follow-ups that are based on the OEM's website, or a series of follow-ups that are based on a Facebook lead. And so we can assign those follow-up chains to the lead source, and then it gets assigned to the lead accordingly. Well, what is a follow-up chain? So a follow-up chain is a series of communication touch points or appointment touch points that get assigned to that lead, and it follows the lead through its entire cycle. For example, I've just pulled up the list of follow-up chain items that's related to my example. And what will happen in the first interaction is 30 minutes after that lead hits Lightspeed, a text message goes out to the customer thanking them for their inquiry, letting them know that Chris Hauk is their salesperson and that he'll be calling them shortly. And as the clock is ticking, additional communications go out, either automated, and I know it's automated if there's a dot present in the automated column on the follow-up chain list, or if there's not a dot present, it could be an appointment that's given to the salesperson. So maybe Chris Hauk was assigned a phone call 2 hours after that lead hits Lightspeed, wanting Chris to call the customer. There's that human element. There's still a person behind all of this, right? And that's important. And as the clock starts ticking, tasks and appointment gets assigned to not only the salesperson, but potentially the F&I manager, the person who's going to be desking the deal. Messages go back to the service writer and sales manager so that they can prepare that vehicle for delivery when it comes time. But as the clock ticks, those appointments and messages go out automatically throughout the sales cycle. While those automated messages going out, text messages and emails go out to the customer, on the right side of the communications panel is the audit trail of every email and text message that Lightspeed sends, as well as the response back from the customer. When the customer responds back with an "I appreciate the follow-up, thank you, excellent work," those responses come right back into Lightspeed so that we can see everything that we've told the customer and everything the customer has agreed to. Now, above and beyond that, if I wanted to send out a push, a text message or email, I can select either of those manually, and I can send out a text message or an email without using follow-up chains, so I can kind of circumvent that process and continue to communicate and offer that human element of communication in the CRM cycle. So let's go back to the main screen, and we're going to backtrack just a little bit. We're going to talk about this particular experience. So far, we've got John Thomas saw something on our website that he liked. That request for more information drops into Lightspeed, assigns a salesperson, the stages, the communication all starts happening simultaneously as that lead hits Lightspeed. But ultimately, we probably have multiple of these happening. Hopefully we have 10 or 20 or 30 of these happening at any given time based on each individual salesperson in your business. And if I've got all this activity happening in a single deal, imagine if I'm trying to juggle 10 or 20 or 30 of these simultaneously. How do I do it? Well, one way you could do it, and I'm not going to encourage this, but one way is you could go back to your leads, quotes, and deals screen, and you could just simply hit refresh several times throughout the day and stare at this screen and wait for the next lead to come in and interact with it. But you got more important things to do than that. So I'm not going to encourage you to do that. You could, but don't do that. Let's look at some better alternatives. And some of those better alternatives are this. In the system menu is a function called System Alerts. And right now, if you have Lightspeed, you already have system alerts in your program. And by adding CRM to the system, you're going to add additional alerts. And what are alerts? Well, when I go into the alert screen, I've got a series of headers that is describing instances or functions or processes that exist in Lightspeed that I can assign myself to be communicated about throughout the cycle of that particular business. The CRM piece, for example, if a vehicle that my customer is looking for, I've got a lead that's open for a 2026 hovercraft. And as soon as one of those 2026 hovercrafts hit my Lightspeed system, I want to know about it. I want to get notified by a little pop-up in Lightspeed. I want an email and I want a text message that lets me know that that hovercraft arrived in Lightspeed. Well, how did it arrive? Well, maybe it's coming in as a trade on a deal. Maybe it was just added to major unit inventory, or maybe somebody brought it into the service department for repairs. But I want to know about all those things because I've got somebody that wants to buy it, and I'm going to go find that person, the salesperson, the service writer who checked that vehicle in, and I'm going to try to sell that. I want to know about it. The other things that might happen is if I've got an appointment, I've been assigned a phone call, a delivery, a pickup, something related to that communications tab we saw on the deal screen. When I've got an appointment coming up, I want to know 15 minutes prior to that appointment, I want a notification in Lightspeed. I want an email. I want a text message. And I want the mobile application to alert me about those things so I don't miss an appointment. I want to know when one of my customers arrived in the parts department, in the service department. He's arrived in the sales department, or she's arrived in the sales department. I want to know those things. When a lead's been received, when I get a lead assigned to my name, if somebody went to the website for the OEMs, or they went to my website or Facebook, and that lead drops into Lightspeed and my name becomes the salesperson, I want to know about it. And also going back to a BDC or a management group that receives those leads, when those people change the name on the lead, I want to be notified. Otherwise, I'm going to miss it, right? So I want an email, I want a text message, I want a pop-up in Lightspeed that tells me that that's happened, among other things. So system alerts is a key part of the process. What are some of the other tools that you can use? The desktop is another tool. And those of you that have used the desktop before, you've seen this before. Those of you that haven't, in system is a function called desktop. And generally, each person in your business has certain accesses to desktop. When you add CRM to your system, when you open up desktop and you hit the designer button, you're going to see some CRM in brackets, functions that relate to the CRM process, not only in the follow-up portion, but also in the sales portion of the business within those desktop designers. And as I'm setting up my desktop, and I think of the desktop as kind of my dashboard to Lightspeed, each of these color-coded boxes or widgets are telling me about activity that's happening in Lightspeed in real time. It's refreshed every couple of minutes. So we've got a real bird's eye view of what's going on inside of the sales department. And I can assign those CRM related functions to my desktop so that I can keep tabs on things like my daily calendar. What appointments, phone calls, text messages do I have today? And if I'm a manager, I might be looking at this too, and I might be looking at a specific user or a specific department and see what do their appointments look like, and are they following up? Open follow-ups and completed follow-ups are a couple of widgets that fall into the desktop as well. What appointments, emails, text messages, phone calls do we have today? And if I have a question about any of the things on the screen, the blue text on all of the widgets are hyperlinks that I can click on and get the details. I can get the context. I can get the questions of what is this answered. And as things get expired or they go overdue, sometimes you're going to be on a phone call when you have an appointment that comes and goes. You're going to be in the middle of delivering a vehicle when a phone call comes and goes. You're going to miss them. So it's going to happen. So you're going to have overdue appointments listed here as well. Get too many of those and management might slap your hand. So you want to keep track of those things. And then if you get ahead of the game, you don't have any overdues, you don't have any today appointments, you can get into the future and really manage things that haven't come due yet. One other thing, going back to return on investment, one of the widgets that I like to look at on the desktop is my leads by source widget. This is kind of cool. What this is showing is where my leads are coming from. Where's the bulk of the activity from the internet coming into my sales department? Which lead source is my most efficient? Number of leads, ultimately how many of those leads become sold units, and then there's that return on investment value. I get to see what is my return on those lead source investment right from this widget. And there's some reports that really dive into the nuts and bolts on that in just a moment. We'll look at those. Some other functions like sales goals. You can set up some goals and preferences that say we always want to achieve this particular stage in the process, and we've chosen the write-up stage as one of our goals. We want to make sure salespeople are always getting to that before they inactivate the lead or turn it over to another salesperson. We want to make sure that our salespeople are following up X% of the time. 85% is a pretty common number. 100% is almost impossible to hit because, of course, we just mentioned you might be in the middle of a phone call or delivery when one of your appointments comes and goes. So you want to make sure that you set some goals that are achievable. So follow-up goals, say at 85%, set a stage goal, and then set a sales goal. Of all the leads that you're romancing and working, how many of those become sold units? 25%, 23%, 50%? How many of them become sold units? We want to know about that. So those are just some of the features that live on the desktop portion that communicate the activity that's going on in CRM that not only the sales group, individuals can take advantage of and monitor, but also management can keep track of. Going back to the deal screen, let's go back to our Mr. John Thomas deal. Another tool that you've got available as a salesperson is the mobile application. And I've just pulled the image of the Lightspeed mobile app. And we did a webinar a month ago on the Lightspeed mobile app. Hopefully you got a chance to see that. If you didn't, we've got a recording available that reviews all the details in the mobile application. But just to speak to the mobile app at a high level and remind folks, it is available for Android and Apple devices, works on tablets and cell phones, so virtually any mobile device that you might be using. And it affords you a number of accesses to the program. And we're going to speak specifically to the CRM elements, which live in follow-ups and the deal screens. And if I hit that follow-ups button on my mobile application, I get a calendar view of what my appointments look like. Who do I need to call? What deliveries? What pickups? What text messages and emails do I have to send out today? And I can manage my schedule from the mobile application. And anything I do inside of the appointments, whether I'm updating the status, adding notes, marking something complete, All of those details communicate directly back to the sales deal, so that audit trail of communication is captured inside of the deal screen. So managers can keep track of it, other salespeople can keep track of it, and me, sometimes I'm forgetful. It helps me keep track of things as well. And as we kind of go through the mobile application, you can also access your full list of sales deals. So if you need to get into a sales deal, create an appointment, mark something complete, add some notes to it, you can access your full list of deals, the same list that we saw on the desktop a moment ago, just scaled down to fit the phone, even to the color coding, the status coding. You can even create a new lead if you're away from your desk, if you're away from the business. If you're at lunch and you run into a customer that says, "Hey, you're the guy from the boat store. Do you have any boats?" Well, of course, hopefully we have boats, and let's get your name. Let's follow up with you. But if I go into the deal screen inside of the mobile application, I can see when my last appointment was, future appointments, what we're talking about in terms of notes, signed documentation, photos. All of those are available to me in the mobile application, but ultimately it's allowing me to manage that customer experience, maximize that human element in the sales process, and make me efficient. And this is the tools that we use to sell stuff, right? And that's the important part of all of what we're talking about. So not only that, there is a text and email function that relates to the mobile application. Whoops. And I can text or email from the mobile application. And as I do that, I'm seeing the same audit trail of communication that we saw back on the communications tab a moment ago together. That back and forth email and text communication that's in the deal is also visible on the mobile application. So if there's ever a question of, "Mr. Customer or Mrs. Customer, you promised to this," or "Mr. Dealer, you said this," well, it's all visible to me in the phone, and I can continue to communicate there as well, really to kind of emphasize that human element in communication. I'm actually a human pushing these buttons instead of a robot, right? And that's the key. So one other element that's brand new, and some of you that haven't seen this before, you're in for a treat. We've added a new element to the CRM, the sales process, and really to Lightspeed in general, and it's our calendar tool. And I'm going to go up to the very top of the screen, click that calendar button on the very top right corner of the screen, and as I do that, it's thinking for a minute while it loads the details, but just to offer some context into what we see by default, when I access it from the upper right corner, I get what I would estimate is kind of the sales experience when it comes to the calendar. Now, there's a service experience as well, and we may touch on that for just a moment. But initially, what we see on the left is a calendar, current month, future month. We've got some color-coded rectangles that are conveying a little bit of information about appointments, follow-ups, tasks that are assigned to various members of my business within each of those days. And as I hover my mouse over those, I can see some of the context. What do those appointments mean? What are those follow-ups? What is on that particular day? And if I'm curious about what the color coding is, I've got a legend that communicates what those colors mean. So I can really kind of see what's going on based on the little tiny boxes on the calendar. But over to the right, I've got the folks in the business that are sharing their calendar with me along with my own personal calendar. So there's Brian, there's my calendar, and there's Riley. He's one of my companions that shares his calendar with me. And if maybe I'm the head of a department and I've got 5 or 10 or 20 people reporting to me, I might have 5 or 10 or 20 columns on this screen showing each person in my department and their names and all of the appointments that they're assigned by what we've talked about so far in CRM. And as I'm looking at Brian's or I'm looking at Riley's, I can see anything from a delivery of a vehicle to, he's even got some service related tasks assigned to him. And Brian does a couple things, wears a couple different hats in the business, and so does Riley. But he's been assigned some phone calls. He's got some communications in terms of appointments. He'll be turning wrenches on some vehicles in the back. So these are all the appointments that Brian has and Riley has available to them to manage their daily calendar, their daily schedule. And again, it communicates directly back to the desktop, to the mobile application, and it's related to all the functions we saw on that deal screen related to CRM a moment ago. Pretty powerful stuff. So with that said, we're going to kind of scoot over to the things that management's interested in keeping tabs on. And that would be some of the reporting tools that live in Lightspeed. And we're going to talk about those a little bit as well. We're going to talk about CRM reporting and analytics. And we've already started talking about some of those on the desktop screen, and I might quickly just pop back over to those to show you again. But I want to show you some tools that management is using to kind of keep tabs on who's doing what in the sales department, some ways that they can increase their efficiencies and maximize what the folks in the sales department are doing day by day. And let's pop back into Lightspeed. I'm going to pull up that desktop screen again. So from a management standpoint, again, just to reemphasize, As a manager, I can look at specific users, I can look at specific departments and see what the appointments looked like today. I can see who's been following up, who hasn't been following up. I can look at specific departments and look at what appointments look like, overdue, today's appointments, futures, and completed follow-ups. But I've also got some reports that live in Lightspeed under Sales, Reports, and the ones in brackets, the CRM reports, traffic log report, for example. And when I run my traffic log report, I can pick date ranges, so to and from. I can pick traffic types, traffic, completed follow-ups, or both. I can pick and choose specific salespeople, and I can use some sorting functionality in the report. Click Generate Report, and I'm greeted with the data. And rather than going into that rainbow of colors screen we saw at the beginning and going into each deal and seeing what the appointments look like, what the notes look like, this is where in a single space I can see what notes were applied to a follow-up. What did we tell a customer? Are my salespeople following up? Where are they at in their process? When's their next follow-up appointment? So I can really see what that traffic looks like in an overarching view for all of my salespeople without having to go into each individual deal to see that, or even have to bother the salesperson because hopefully they're busy enough not to be bothered. Another report that lives in sales, and we'll talk about quickly, is just the salesperson activity report, which is a little less detailed, but it gives you a sense based on the time frame that you put into the report and the individual salespeople that you select, where they're at in their lead process. How many leads are they working? Have they achieved that write-up stage or whatever stage you define as one of their goals? Or how many new vehicles have they sold? Used units have they sold? Where are they at in terms of number of calls, emails, etc.? But ultimately, where are they at in their closing percentage? What is their gross profit percentage? So it's kind of an eye on what's going on in CRM, but also at the end of the story, which is ultimately the sale of the product. Stage performance is another report that back to those stage definitions. Where are we at in the process from the greet stage, the beginning of the story, to the deliver stage, the end of the story? How many leads are currently open? Do we have a salesperson that's getting stuck at a particular place? We can offer them some coaching and get them past that stuck point? And again, ultimately, how many of those leads have become sold units? And those are things that we want to keep tabs on as we go through the CRM process and things that management are keeping eyes on. One thing I'm just going to scoot back to back inside of Lightspeed and back to our John Thomas deal that I did neglect to mention, and I want to bring this up. I apologize. I can't believe I forgot to mention this, but one of the things that follow-up chains will do, and this is where the automation piece becomes really strong, is after the sale. When that sale is finalized, follow-up chains continue to communicate even after the sale, even after the customer's taken delivery and the paperwork's done and the dust is settled. Lightspeed continues to communicate via email and text to that customer to remind them of things like 30 days after the sale. Mr. and Mrs. Customer, we hope you had a great experience. Here's a link to a survey. We'd love to hear from you. 45 days after, Mr. and Mrs. Customer, it's time for your first service. Have you talked to our service department? Here's their phone number. Let's get you scheduled. And then those communications continue to go out to ultimately continue to drive that customer back to your business for service, for parts, potentially to trade that vehicle in that they bought from you just recently. Maybe a year and a half later, it's time to trade it in. Check out the new colors, the new models. We've got them in. Come take a look, Mr. and Mrs. Customer. So follow-up chains are going to do that. It's a little bit of a mass marketing campaign to some degree. Automation is key in that regard. It's going to bring those customers back, maximize that customer experience, maximize the customer relationship for your business. With that said, one other detail before I move to closing and taking some questions is in service. And I mentioned there is a service element to CRM. It's a much smaller element today. We're looking to expand it in the future. But right now, the service element of CRM is much like we just looked at on the CRM side of the business. If I take any one of these repair orders from the repair order list, estimates and repair orders is what we're looking at now. The communications tab that we saw on the sales deal side also lives in service. And you can set up those automation communications, but they're more service tailored. So you're going to have your own communication tools, your own follow-up chains that have service elements attached to them. We're not pulling those same follow-up chains from the sales department into service because the experience in service is completely different. And you can apply follow-up chains that get added to a repair order and update the customer as you go through the repair order cycle. Much like sales, those communications start going out from the moment you save and at various intervals throughout the service process. 15 minutes after save, maybe a day after save, and it automates those communications, but it also assigns appointments to the service advisor, service manager, potentially even the technicians to update the customer on the process. And those statuses that you see on each of the jobs, from ready to work to ready to cashier, are also triggers that send out communication to the customer throughout the service cycle. One of our most popular automations and services, when you get to ready to cashier, customer gets a text or email letting them know their vehicle's ready for pickup, which that can save you a bunch of time in the service department, so you're not picking up the phone and having to call. But again, I do encourage you to still interact with your customers, be a human. Customers like that. They appreciate that. And that's how you're going to maximize your customer satisfaction. So do keep tabs on that. Awesome. So we've gone over a lot of different elements of, mostly we spent our time in the sales side of the business. We did talk a little bit about service, but really why Lightspeed CRM? And some of the things we spoke about in lead management, automation and communication, but retaining that human element, making sure there's still a person behind those pushes. That's the important piece. The mobile application, the brand new calendar, which I hope you got some value out of. We're really excited about the new calendar. Reporting and analytics. And we certainly appreciate your time today. We know your time is valuable, so thanks for spending some time with us here on Wednesday webinars. Do we have any questions that we can take?
Yeah, thank you so much, Brian. Great information. And a couple of questions have come in, and one that maybe we can talk about, and not to put you on the spot, but people are really interested in seeing the leads by the different stages, and just wondering if there's any reports that they can actually pull to see those leads by different stages.
Absolutely. There's a number of custom reports that you can build. Now, the system as standard comes with 350 different reports in the program. Those of you that are on Lightspeed, if you go into your sales module, go to sales, custom reports, leads, quotes, and deals, you'll find some CRM reports there. If you don't find what you're looking for, we're certainly happy to help you build something that's custom tailored to your needs.
Perfect, perfect. And I know that's kind of some of the responses that the tech team who's on here answering questions have also provided. So, a lot of things that you can do beyond just the standard reports that come in Lightspeed. A couple other questions too. Just one that came in was just wondering about even the mobile app. I think we get this lots of times, just wondering, kind of what the fee is and costs are for the mobile app.
Oh, I love that question. The best fee possible. It's free. So the mobile application costs you nothing. I apologize for not emphasizing that. The mobile app is completely free. Putting it on your device is completely free. We do recommend reaching out to Lightspeed for help in installing it, if whether you're working with implementation support or somebody at Lightspeed to get some help getting that installed on your device. Also, the other thing to consider for salespeople and also for people in your service department, access to the mobile application is free. It does not use a user license. So you can use the mobile application at your leisure, and you're not going to impact anything negatively in your business.
Perfect. And I know there's just a few more, but I think a lot of the ones that have come in have been more about the reports. So I think a lot of those have been answered kind of as we've been going through the webinar. I don't know if, Jay, if there's anything else specifically, even though when you guys have been reading questions that you think should be answered. Not to put them on the spot either, but I think they've covered most of them.
Yeah, I believe so. And I will say, it does seem like the reporting is a question, and we will have a follow-up webinar next week. And we can definitely show some of those reports and how to utilize the strong reporting functionality that we have inside Lightspeed, along with the CRM functions to get a lot out of the system. So we'll be showing that.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks, Jay, for leaving that plug. Just a reminder, next Wednesday, as Jay said, it's 11 o'clock Central again. There's a CRM technical webinar, which again, the tech support team kind of joins this one, sees what some of the questions are, and then we use that time next week to really dig deeper into the questions that you might have. So certainly we appreciate those questions, but I think that kind of covers most of the questions that have come in. So I know we're kind of past time. So I want to thank you again, Brian, for an excellent CRM presentation, and thanks everybody for attending today's webinar, and hope to see you next week on the CRM technical webinar. Have a great day and enjoy your Valentine's Day.
Thanks, everybody. Appreciate your time.